Hi everyone, my name is Taylor and I work in marketing here at Random House. Today we have an Inside the House Instagram live session and I'm going to be joined by one of our executive editors, ShaunaSummer. While I wait for Shauna to join, I'm going to quickly pin a comment to the top here so those who tune in later will know what we're talking about. In the meantime, feel free to tell me where you're tuning in from and what you're reading. I hope you all had a wonderful weekend. I spent all day yesterday reading in bed, so mine was fantastic. And let's see if we have Shauna here yet. Yep, here we go. Hi.
Hi, that was so easy.
Isn't
I've
it
never done
amazing
this
when it
before.
works? I know I get nervous every time that for some reason the technology is going to fail, but so far so good.
Yeah, how are you doing?
I'm good. I feel like it's been 1,000 years since our last walk in the park back in March.
Back in the early days of quarantine.
Yeah, so it's really good to see you.
Good to see you too.
So for everyone who's tuning in, this is our Inside the House series, and I'm here with ShaunaSummer, who's one of our executive editors. Shauna, do you want to tell us a little bit about your job here at Random House?
Sure. I always describe my job as having three parts. The first part is that I have a list of authors that I work with on an ongoing basis. I'm working with them at all different stages of the process. I'm working with them on proposal, what they're going to write next. I'm working with them on revising their next book, and then through the publication process. And I'm their contact point person for that. Then the second part of my job is being the point person contact for all of the other departments, for marketing, all of you guys, and publicity, for production and working with the production editors and copy editors, working with the art department on what the cover is going to look like. And then the third part of my job is I'm an acquiring editor, which means that I get in submissions, and I'm always trying to buy new books and develop relationships with agents and find new books for us to publish.
That was such a succinct response. I'm very impressed.
Thank you. I've had a lot of years to sort of boil it down.
That definitely helps. So how did you first get started in publishing?
I was an English major, not that you have to be an English major to work in publishing. And I always loved books. I always loved reading. After I graduated from college, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but came across an advertisement. This was back in the days when there were like posters with like the tear off sheets.
Yeah.
For the NYU summer publishing program. And I'd always thought teaching or publishing, not knowing at all what publishing entailed. And so I applied to the NYU summer publishing program and attended that, which was great for giving an overview of all of the different kinds of jobs that exist in publishing. I think everybody sort of assumes that editorial is kind of the only way. But when I started like, oh, subsidiary rights, what is this? And then I ended up being an editor anyway, but you know. So I attended that and I got a couple of interviews coming out of that program and that didn't pan out. And then a few months later, I sent letters back around to HR people and got a bunch more interviews and then got my job. My first job was as an assistant in the publisher's office, which was a great entry-level job because I sat in on all of the meetings. I really got an overview of how the whole process worked and just got to know marketing people and all of the editors. But pretty quickly, I knew that I wanted to shift over to editorial.
Yeah. So we got kind of an overview of your job, but what exactly about editorial do you love?
I really love working with authors and seeing a book go from having it be the best thing that it can be. Pretty regularly, the experience of having a first draft that has lots of potential, but also has issues and things that need to be worked out. And then to have that next draft come in and even exceed expectations of what I thought it could be. is probably the best experience, or one of the best anyway.
Well, what I love about marketing is that I get the best finished version already to work with. I don't have to worry about the improvement. But what kinds of things do you think about when you're editing a book? And what kind of process is that like with an author?
As far as how I work with authors, I'm pretty flexible and try to work with them in the best way that they want to work. So sometimes that means I get a complete manuscript and I don't see anything. I actually only had one author where that was the case. But sometimes I see a partial draft. Sometimes I'll just see a first rough draft. And then as my process as an editor, I mean, really it's just being a reader. Mm-hmm. And noting the things that are confusing to me, or just things that jump out at me. A lot of times it's just questions of why is this character doing this here, or is there a way to make this tighter or more compelling or more layered? A lot of times that is the thing of wanting an author to go deeper on, particularly on characters and conflict.
Sure. And so who are some of the authors that you've worked with in some of your favorite books?
Well, I've mostly I started off doing a lot of romance, and romance was always bread and butter part of my job. And I grew up reading romance. I've always loved romance. We publish less genre romance these days, but a couple of my authors that I worked with from that time, Suzanne Brockman and Mary Balog, are two of my faves from that time. And then I've always done a lot of women's fiction. So I work with Debbie Maycumber, who writes romance and women's fiction. She actually has a new Christmas book out right now.
Yes.
Called Jingle All the Way. And then I worked with Sarah Addison Allen, who's the author of Garden Spells, which was her first book. So I worked with her on her first 4 books.
Loved those books.
Yeah, she's really great. I work with Karen Marie Monning, who has her new and probably last book in the Fever series comes out in February. And that's been really great. I started working with her just on this series. And so it's been quite an experience to see an entire series like that through. That was a bit of a departure for her, actually a pretty big departure for her. I've loved those books. I work with Nancy Thayer, who writes women's fiction set in Nantucket. And she is really great. And then one of the best parts of the job is finding debuts and like new people. Yeah. So I have a couple. I had one debut come out this year, back in June, called The Lost Diary of Venice by Margot Darrow, which I love. It's a dual narrative, historical, contemporary. And another author I work with who does a similar kind of dual historical narrative, which I love, historical contemporary narrative, is Sarah Geo. And we have a new book coming from her next year called With Love from London. And then the other debut that I have coming in March is called The Sweet Taste of Muscadines by Pamela Terry, that I think we're all really excited about.
Yeah, we're working on that one together, and I'm such a fan. It's just one of the most like charming, fun reads ever, with deep Southern family secrets. So that one, I'm personally very excited about that one.
Yeah, me too. We've been starting to get some great blurbs on it. She's also a really great follow on Instagram for authors that are, or followers that are interested. She's a lot of different fun stuff that she posts. So
yeah. So on the marketing side, I typically work on a book for, between 6 months to a year. So we're kind of leading up to publication. How long do you work with an author on a book?
It's really wide range.
Yeah.
Sometimes things happen really fast and you have just maybe 1 round of revisions, maybe 2. Sometimes books take longer for an author to write than they expected. And it can take a lot longer that way. Usually there's a couple of drafts, and then it just depends on how fast an author writes. again, some authors write very fast and can do 2 books a year. Some authors are, I know, which is,
Oh my gosh.
I mean, Debbie, when I first started working with Debbie Maycomber, she was doing 3 books a year.
That is incredible.
Yeah. And well, I mean, Danielle Steele, we do 6 books a year, and she writes every last one of those. So, and they're all really great. So, but then other authors obviously take at least a year, sometimes 2 years. So it really depends.
Amazing. Well, I'm going to do a quick recap for everyone just tuning in. This is Random House Live with Shauna Summers talking about the editing process. So Shauna, when you first get, a submission, and what kinds of things are you looking for? Are you most interested in plot or characters, or, is there one thing that you kind of gravitate towards?
There's not one thing that I gravitate towards. I mean, really, it kind of comes down to forgetting that I'm reading a submission. That always is the best sign. So when I'm reading something and I keep thinking, oh, is this good, or is this going to get better, or how would we publish this? When my mind goes in those places, that's usually not a great sign. But when I sort of can't put something down, I mean, really, it's just like any reader with a great book. That's what you're looking for. So, yeah.
Amazing. Let's see if we have any other great questions here. They're really coming in. Oh, our colleague Karen would like to know if you have a recent favorite read that you didn't work on, but that you read for fun.
Oh, I actually have had a lot of great reading this year. And I know some of my colleagues have struggled to read for pleasure amidst COVID life. And I've been so grateful that has not been a problem for me. I read the new J. Courtney Sullivan, Friends and Strangers, which I'd never read her before.
Yeah.
And I really loved it. Like, I keep thinking about it, like weeks later, I keep thinking about it. And then I also read The Warmth of Other Suns this year, which I know I'm a little late on that game. And I really loved that. I loved The Vanishing Half, like everybody.
So good.
Yeah. So I'm always trying to read for pleasure. I'm always trying to have at least one book. Sometimes it takes me longer to get through it than other times, depending upon how busy I am with work reading. But I think it's important to always have something to remind me why I work in publishing.
Yeah.
So.
Get a little outside perspective.
Yeah.
We've had this question come up a couple of times, but do you have any advice for aspiring writers?
I sometimes feel like other writers are probably the better sources of wisdom. I did have a friend who is an agent once say that the most important thing is finishing the book. This is Amy Jameson. I should give credit where credit is due. She said that it's sort of like ice skating across a pond. Like, you got to get across the pond, and then you can go back and learn to be a better ice skater, or go back and revise the manuscript. So finishing is really cannot be underestimated. And yeah, to get it done, and then you can always revise.
Yeah. There's a question here. Do editors often like to become writers as well? And I'm wondering if that applies to you.
It does not apply to me. I think I'm actually probably a pretty good writer, but I'm not a storyteller. So if I were to ever write anything, it would definitely be nonfiction. So I don't know what that would be. But there are some editors who become published authors. We worked with Jennifer E. Smith for many years, who is also a published writer. Our own Benjamin Dreyer is a writer too. So, but it's not a definite thing. So, and so I am not a writer, and I'm for sure not a storyteller, more than I'm not.
Amazing. Let's see another question here. Oh, so do you mostly edit fiction books, or do you also acquire some nonfiction?
I, at this point, only edit fiction. I actually have been on the hunt to acquire some nonfiction. It would be very select. It would have to be the exact right thing for my list. And I've had some things in that I've been interested in, but not the quite right thing yet. So but yeah, I think it would be fun to work on something new and different.
Yeah. When you're acquiring a bunch of books, do you kind of like to acquire like different things at once so that you're working, so that your brain's kind of doing different things, or do you like to kind of focus on one thing at a time?
For acquiring, it's really what comes across my desk and is very much feels a little bit like probably the way the muse feels for writers, of where it just sort of comes and you can't predict it or control it. One of the things I do like about my job is that it is a lot of different things. I'll have, a week where I'm reading a lot of submissions, or I'll have a week that I'm editing something, or I'm working on cover copy, or, there's a lot of different tasks to do. And so it's easy to mix it up. It's not the same day over and over, which is good.
Yeah, that's definitely nice. We have another great audience question here that's asking if you can talk about your career journey and anything that you've learned over your years as an editor.
Oh, that is a good question. Well, I'm the picture of publishing consolidation, where I started off working at one place and have worked in 4 places that are all now the same place. So a lot of publishing is rolling with changes and restructuring and just sort of seeing where it goes. I actually left publishing for a couple of years and went back to school, and I thought I got a master's in marriage and family therapy, thinking I would maybe make a career change and be a therapist. And about halfway through, I was like, no, I miss books. I miss working in an office and all of those things that go along with it. So I feel like it's really important to figure out what you don't want to do as much as what you do want to do, which can be hard because it feels like wasted time, but I think it's really not. I think being a nice person goes a really long way in any field.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Especially in a small industry, definitely.
For sure.
Amazing. Well, we're just out of time here. We're actually a little bit over. But it was really great talking with you, Shauna.
Great talking to you. So nice to see you face to face.
Yes, we'll have to catch up soon.
Yes, for sure.
Amazing. Thanks for tuning in, everyone.